All right, good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to another short war summary. And today we're receiving fantastic news coming out of Ukraine that apparently Ukrainian forces are breaking through Russian lines, and on Russian Telegram channels there are panic and concern about this happening. So apparently the Ukrainians are indeed in their main thrust of the offensive, and they are making some pretty good progress. So let's go ahead and jump right into our first piece of news for the day, which is a Twitter post from us. It says, breaking, Ukraine steps up counteroffensive with new push south and around Bakhmut. And we do know for a fact that in Bakhmut, some extremely fierce fighting is still happening there. The Russians, for some reason, do not want to lose an inch of ground there, and that's probably where some of the strongest fighting is still happening, is in the ruined city of Bakhmut. We also see here that Ukraine has started that new push south, which we'll get into on a map in just a moment and show you exactly where that is happening. Also, it says here that Ukrainian officials say that every type of weapon is in use, including U.S. cluster munitions, as troops push forward. And this last part here is very significant. Ukraine says that they're putting every type of weapon in use, meaning they're throwing everything they have. They're throwing the kitchen sink at this offensive push, indicating once again that it is their main thrust, and it has started, and the U.S. officials told us that a few days ago. So, very promising here, and it looks like Ukraine might be in for some pretty big progress in the near future, in maybe the coming weeks. So let's go ahead and jump right into our next news article here, which is from Visegrad 24. It says the Ukrainian army has broken through the first lines of the Russian main Surovikin defense line, and the breakthrough happened east of Robatny. And we can see here on the map, this is the ISW's analysis, by the way. Very good analysis, and we always follow this pretty closely. You can see down here in the green circle here is Robatny, and there is a ton of Russian defense positions here. And we can also see over here there are also other positions, but we can see that the Ukrainians have broken through a pretty big spot right here in the yellow, and they are apparently fighting extremely hard to break through that line because it is heavily reinforced by the Russians, and this is definitely not an easy fight whatsoever. The Ukrainians are definitely putting a ton of energy into this situation to break through. We also see some other spots along the front line where they are trying to break through, but they haven't quite done it just yet. I suspect in the next coming days we'll probably see some more breakthroughs, but for now the two major ones are right here, and they are doing a pretty solid job of breaking through. So that is that piece of news. So let's go ahead and jump into our next piece of news, which is from the Kyiv Post, and it says on the road south to Mariupol and to cut Russia's land corridor in occupied Ukraine, Ukraine's military yesterday liberated the 9th village of its summer offensive. So Ukraine is now on their 9th village of the offensive. So they are still making solid progress. And even though the U.S. has complained that the offensive isn't going as fast as they want it to go, I think that isn't fair. I think it's moving pretty solidly fast. Ukraine was held up for a little while because they didn't have the Western weapons that they were promised. So in my opinion, that delay was caused by the West. So for them to complain about it now seems a little bit hypocritical. So Ukraine is making progress now that they have those weapons and they're on their 9th village. So let's go ahead and jump right into our next piece of news here. We have learned that a missile attack has apparently happened in the Russian city of, and pardon my pronunciation, I'm not very good with this, Taganrog, I believe. And the cause of the blast is still unknown, but the remains of a projectile have been found. So what I have learned is apparently this was a missile attack, most likely from Ukraine. But we're not exactly sure about that because we don't have official confirmation yet. But the obvious answer would probably be Ukraine. We can see here that it has caused extensive damage to the sides of these buildings here. It has buried a car in rubble, and it is quite severe. Also, we see here that the governor of Rostov region says that the rocket exploded in that city, causing injuries. And in the next post here, we learn some more details about that. And we can actually see a video of the missile coming down out of the sky here. You'll see it in just a second. Right there in the yellow circle, it is going behind the tree line, and it's going to hit those buildings and destroy some targets. And right in the middle of that city. And we see it is caught actually on a dash cam video right here and uploaded. So the missile came straight down and right into the middle of the city. So with that being said, let's jump into our next piece of news here. It's from Insider Paper, and it says Moscow says it shot down a second Ukraine missile over southern Russia. So now we have Moscow claiming that a second one did come in after the first one did hit that Russian city, and that apparently they shot it down. Now, for the first one to be able to get through, once again, this proves that Russian air defenses are not nearly as good as they claim them to be, and there are definitely holes and big areas that they aren't protecting with Russian air defenses, and it's allowing Ukraine to get in some pot shots on Russian cities as well. And we can see here that once again, Russia is claiming they shot down the second one, but we're really not sure if they were actually able to do that. So we'll have to wait and see if that was actually the case. So moving on here to our next piece of news, we have a post from Nexta. And says, according to Politico, the first American Abrams tanks may appear on the battlefield in Ukraine no earlier than September of this year. So, once again, we have some stalling going on by America because they're not providing a date when the tanks will be delivered. They are simply saying that they'll arrive no earlier than September. So, once again, kind of disappointing coming out of the U.S. It seems like we should be able to give Ukraine an exact date when these will be delivered. If we know that they won't arrive any earlier than September, then my question is, what is the holdup and what is the problem in sending them? Because there must be some kind of problem. Otherwise, why are we not sending them right now? So it would be nice if the U.S. would stop stalling or at least provide some context as to why this isn't happening to give some reassurances to the Ukrainians and also the American public that support Ukraine why we aren't sending the stuff as we say we're going to send it. So kind of disappointing on this one. But moving on to our next piece of news here, we have to switch gears just a little bit. We have a post from Ocean Defender, and it's about the Black Sea situation, which is still an ongoing crisis, but it really isn't receiving as much news coverage as it was before. This post says the National Bank of Ukraine has stated they expect for the export of agricultural products, including grain, through the Black Sea to remain closed until the end of the war. And this is kind of bad news right here because it looks like Ukraine is expecting not to be able to export any more grain products for some unknown reason. I'm not sure if it's because of the extra mines that Russia has laid around the Black Sea, making it too dangerous for the ships to go through, or maybe it's because Turkey isn't really willing to step up and actually help Ukraine escort those ships. But clearly, the Ukrainians have gotten word that something has changed, and they are apparently preparing for the worst case scenario where they can't export grain whatsoever. So, unfortunately, another piece of disappointing news here. But maybe things will change. Things change so rapidly in this war that, we could see the ships going through very quickly, but we don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But moving on to our next piece of news here, we have a post from Anton Yeroshenko, and it says Russian channels with connections to Wagner PMC report that Prigozhin continues his meetings with representatives of African countries who arrived to the summit in St. Petersburg. And here we see that he's in St. Petersburg again. Apparently, Prigozhin can't keep himself out of Russia, and this would seem to violate the deal that we were told about between Putin and Prigozhin, that he was not allowed to return. So apparently, either the deal isn't as solid as we thought, or there was a stipulation in the deal allowing this guy to come back anytime he wants at the behest of Putin. I'm not really sure, but he is back once again. Nutsack is in St. Petersburg, and here he is shaking the hand of another leader. So, to me, this seems a little bit weird because, first of all, if you look at Prigozhin's body language, he looks somewhat uncomfortable, and understandably so, because he's in a very hostile country to him now, in Russia, and to me, this seems a little bit weird, and I'm not really sure why Prigozhin would actually return to Russia, because he's not in the good graces of the Russians. So, he is back here once again and negotiating with world leaders yet again. So, moving on to our last piece of news here, we have a post from the Kyiv Post. It says Poland will almost double the size of its army in response to the threat posed by Russia and Belarus, says the Polish Deputy Prime Minister Jaroslaw, as reported by Polski Radio. And the number of divisions will increase from 3 to 6, so they are exactly doubling the size of their army. And on this one, I'm not totally sure exactly if it is justified, because we heard from Ukraine the other day. They said that they were not concerned about the Wagner fighters in Belarus attacking their country. And with Ukraine being at war, their resources are already stretched pretty thin, and Poland isn't at war. So for them to be doubling the size of their army in response to the threat, to me, it seems like it might or might not be justified. Poland really isn't giving us much detail about why they feel the threat is so serious at this point. Because for Ukraine to be, basically dismissing the threat of Wagner there, the 5,000 fighters in Belarus, it seems like maybe Poland might be capitalizing on this opportunity to basically go ahead and double their army just for the hell of it. But then again, we don't know all the details behind the scenes, so my assumption could be wrong, but you let me know what you think down in the comments about that. It never hurts to double the size of an army, but, sometimes it's justified and sometimes it's not. But with that being said, that was our last piece of news for the day. Of course, we'll be covering all of these events very closely throughout the day, and tonight we will be streaming once again at 10 p.m. Eastern to give you more updates about the Ukraine war and also what's going on as it happens. Also, if you haven't already, go peep our Twitter page. Our Twitter handle is @It'sTheEnforcer. We post updates as they happen over there as well throughout the day before we get to our stream at night. Also, if you want to support us, we do have a Patreon page, and the link is in the description below, and you can go support us over there. That helps us keep doing this work and reporting on the news daily. So I hope this video has been informative to you all, and it's provided some insight to the war, and we do appreciate you watching very much. Also, click the like button and subscribe to the video as well, and that also helps us out tremendously. So thank you all very much for watching, and bye-bye for now.